Welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. My name is Jeff. I'm the host of the podcast where we talk about all things HR, talent, HR tech, world of work. And so we've been doing this podcast for a while now. And so all of our episodes live on our website at GoScaleHR.com. Also, we have a YouTube channel as well. And so, obviously been growing a little bit, over the last little while, which is great. And we're getting more comments and questions, which is also fantastic as well. So we have an excellent topic here. They're all excellent topics, actually. So we're talking about cultivating leadership culture, values, alignment, and performance. And so our speaker or guest today is Nora Beatty. So Nora works for Cohere. She's the head of HR there. So before I bring on Nora, I just want to talk a little bit about this topic because, obviously, leadership culture is a pretty broad topic, but it's also complicated. It's not easy to do, just to be an excellent leader. And so I just have a couple of points I want to make. The first one is leadership is complex. There are thousands of models out there for leadership, and it doesn't really matter which one you prefer. There's a common fact that leaders set the tone for the organization. And when the leader embody the organization value, it creates a positive ripple down effect, through the employee population. So I think that's a pretty basic forward concept. It's easier said than done. I understand that, but that's the crux of the relationship. The second thing, that I want to talk about is really in this episode today, we're going to focus on value and then alignment and performance and how that all connect. It's no secret that driving the right behaviors, cultivating shared value, and ensuring that the leadership effort are strategically aligned to propel the organization forward is the ultimate goal, right? And so, as I mentioned earlier, this is not easy. It's really hard work and it's complicated. But I'm hoping today that we can gain some clarity and learn something new. And I just want to welcome Nora Beatty to the Unmuted podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So it's been a long time coming that we've, been sort of talking about this episode, and I think it's, finally here, and I'm really excited. So Nora, before we dive into our questions and our key topic, can you just maybe tell us a bit, a bit about what you do?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I work at a company called Cohere, which is a generative AI. We actually build large language models that power generative AI, based out of Toronto. We have offices around the world, but we started here, and sort of our biggest presence talent-wise continues to be in Canada. I lead the people function. I joined the company 3 years ago, and I was the first sort of people hire. And since then, we've grown the team. The company has 10x'd essentially in size, and our little people team has grown alongside it. And so I run the HR function, the talent acquisition function, and also we've got like a good team of EAs and office managers that support our leadership. And so I run all of those. Before that, I've been in startups in Toronto for a very long time now.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thank you for that. So let's just dive in because there's quite a bit to talk about here. So what are some of the key traits that you look for in a leader to ensure that they align with and promote the organization's value and culture?
Yeah, this is like a very complex question to start with. The first thing is that I liked what you were saying at the beginning. There's no one answer to this question. I think the key to having leaders that promote the organization's value and culture is that you're clear on what those values and culture are, and that you look for people. So what I mean is you're not backing into it. You don't have a preconceived notion of what makes a good leader, but you understand that good leadership has context. And I think we've all had this experience where we hire somebody who has this incredible pedigree, come from great companies, has grown in those companies. They join your company and they just don't fit. And it can be a bit baffling, but really it's because the thing that you were looking for isn't found in this person. You just you accepted a preconceived or external idea of what good leadership is. For us at Cohere, I think there was a huge advantage to me starting at the company so early because I was able to see what worked and what didn't and develop a bit of a framework there. So looking at leaders who thrived and then looking for common threads, looking for leaders who weren't able to maybe have success in the company and looking for common threads there. picking up on those things and then ensuring that they kind of get rolled into our interview process and our selection process. I mean, specifically at Cohere, I would say like, and this is maybe the one that has been true everywhere I've worked, although again, I still wouldn't call it universal, is humility. I think having people, leaders who come in, accepting that the space is different, the company is different, the needs are different, and who have found a way to leverage their experience without insisting that it is like the one and only or even best way to do things, who take the time to understand what's going on. That is like the one common thread that I have found to be a true leading indicator in successful leaders in all the companies.
I think you have psychic power, because that's what I was just thinking about, where being humble. And that go with all things in life. I mean, I talk to my kids about that actually. So my 3 teenage boys, right? And I'm talking about being humble, because that when you start to go on the side of being arrogant or not humble, egocentric, that really kind of kiboshes everything else. And so, yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. So I agree with you totally that there is no one size sort of fits all, and I think it really has to do with the organization. But I'm glad that you picked up on that one thing about being humble. So, so when you talk about the alignment, so how do you approach, aligning leaders across different departments or teams to create a cohesive leadership culture? Because ultimately, if you have like a leadership team or managers, maybe there's 20 of them. They're all different people, right? So they're all, not their own people. They could be from sort of different parts of the world, or, different upbringing. So, different experiences. So how do you align all of them together?
This is, I would say, like among the biggest challenges that we face, especially in a growth stage or like in the startup stage, because you're still figuring it out. So you don't want to be too prescriptive about that alignment. You want to allow for some deviation from, the core values to see what may or may not work. And at the same time, you want to be super responsive when there's behaviors that are clearly like not working for the organization. So for us at our stage so far, the biggest like tool for alignment has been feedback from the organization. And that was very informal. So it required a lot of relationship building on the part of HR with the core business and with the employees, just day to day, understanding how their leaders are working for them, what is working, what isn't working, and then diving into those things. As we've gotten a little bit bigger, that's becoming more formal. So doing, incorporating upward reviews as like full 360s for leaders as part of performance reviews, which we do twice a year, and ensuring that we're like responding to the feedback that we get as part of that. And evaluating the trends that we're seeing through that process across all of the functions at the highest level. So like making sure that me and the founders are spending time looking over those results and understanding like what is and isn't working. I think it's also, there is this requirement on the part of like your most senior leadership and probably HR as like the stewards of this, to understand the needs of each department. So in the same way that every company doesn't need the same type of leader, each department doesn't need the same type of leader either, because the profiles in those departments are different. The people in those departments are motivated in different ways. They're incentivized in different ways, and they just need a different type of leadership. And so understanding the needs of each team and ensuring that you're staying really close to that, and you're looking for leaders who, yes, have those core values, but also can also flex and like deploy those values in the ways that their teams need them, is really important. I would say, like, if I was to give it one sort of one line answer, it would be HR has to stay super close to the leaders and to the teams that they serve in order to maintain any sense of alignment at our stage.
That's a great answer. My next question really is just a follow on a question to that. Are you using any kind of technology to support this?
Yeah, so somewhat, and I'm like the opposite. I have this like real knee-jerk aversion to HR tech. And the reason is, like, to be completely honest, I've just never found solutions that I didn't have to like manipulate a lot in order to get them to work for us. Okay, but to show,
so let me just back up. So I'm not talking about like a large sort of like solution. I'm talking about something that, obviously when you're trying to align people together, and, you talked about having different data points, like different touch points with different things. And I've been in issues before. It's difficult to collect data from different people. So I'm going somewhere. I'm not actually saying it out loud because I'm hoping that you sort of read my brain again, but we'll see what happens. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think I'm reading your brain. We are introducing technology. We are introducing something for this round of performance reviews because it's just gotten out of hand. We were using Bamboo HR. They have this like really simple, for small companies, it's incredible. It's this really simple performance review tool. It's not working for us anymore. We need to collect way more comprehensive feedback. We need it to be anonymized for real. We need it to aggregate good feedback. It would be lovely if it maybe had like some sort of AI power behind it that could help summarize feedback for us. Hey, so we are using something. We're using 15.5. I can't comment yet. I would plug it if it was working really well, but I can't comment yet because we haven't used it. This is coming up in January. But so we are using a tool. We need it. You need tools. You do need them. You just got to know when and which.
So there you go. So you need tool. Like even though you're like anti-technology, so you are using tool. Cool. Okay. So just shifting gears, just a little bit. What strategies do you use to drive and reinforce the desired values and the behavior on your leadership team? Because ultimately, it's one thing to talk about them and to understand them, but it's another thing to constantly being, demonstrating them and practicing them in sort of day to day. So there's something that you do to make sure that the team's actually aligned?
Yeah, again, this is just a really great question. This is something new for us that we're doing, but I do think it's essential. If you want to reinforce a behavior or a set of values or anything like that, truly, in my opinion, the only way to ensure that is to make it a measure of their performance, like a part of their performance measurement. I don't think that there's like a gentle way to convince people to adhere to a set of values or behaviors that you need them to that guarantees an outcome to the same degree that just incorporating it into their performance does. And so I'll admit that I've been resistant to this. I want leadership to be this like inherent quality in people, and I want them to live up to the values of our leadership because they think that they're great and they want to and they're good people, all of these things. It's just not the way things go. And not because anybody's bad. It's just things get heavy and hard and complicated. And the best way to ensure that everybody sticks to it is to make it part of performance. I think that does a few things. One, it makes things unambiguous, right? Leadership, if you don't define it and write it down and measure people against it, and you kind of leave it up to this like ephemeral thing in the world, you risk misunderstandings. People think that they're living up to a standard because they misunderstood what you needed from them. They think that they're doing well because they haven't heard otherwise. And in reality, there's a misalignment. So one is that it like makes things super clear. And two, I think it conveys seriousness. When you make it part of people, when you measure people's performance based on these things, it immediately indicates that you as an organization are taking this seriously enough that you would say like, look, your compensation is tied to your performance. And if you don't meet these expectations, you won't be comped. No matter how well you meet results, this thing is going to stand in your way. Your growth, your continued growth at the company is going to be anchored on this. And I think we all want to do that sort of implicitly, but I think making it an explicit part of the performance of your leaders is really important. There's a spectrum of how you can do this. I think like companies like Meta will have these grids with these, very clear sort of behaviors that they expect at each level. If you're even at our size, approaching 500, like you probably don't need that quite yet, but you do need some indication of like, is this leader meeting the needs of their team? And so just like squishy questions about like, are you getting what you need from your leader? What more could you use from them? Those kinds of questions, those will give you enough of an indication as to whether that person's like a good leader or not.
I've always struggled with trying to measure values because, I mean, if you, think about it, it becomes a subjective type of exercise sometimes because it depends on who we're measuring it. So did the person actually adhere to this value? Well, I don't know. Yes, no, maybe so. So you have like a foolproof or scientific way of doing it, but is there some way that you measure and try to bring down the subjectivity and bias that tends to happen?
Yeah, so we don't have documented values at our company. We like kind of tried to do it a few years ago. I personally, values tend to be emergent behaviors. They tend to be like, they take time to understand. If you try to lay on top of a new organization a set of values and you don't even know yet if they're going to work for the company, like it tends to kind of backfire. So we don't actually have them documented yet. But there are sort of emergent behaviors that we can observe. We don't really try to measure people on the values per se. From a leadership perspective, the one thing that we're trying to answer and the thing that you're measured on as a leader is, are you meeting the needs of your team? And that is less difficult to get a sense of. You just ask the team. And you're not asking them, is your leader meeting your needs? You're asking them just about if they're getting what they need from the leader. So like, what are the ways in which this person is helping your growth? What are some things that you would like to see them start doing that they're not doing right now? And you'd be surprised the kinds of answers you get. Like it might be something as simple as they're not, I'd love to do regular one-on-ones. And you're like, whoa, like that's crazy that you're not already doing regular one-on-ones.
Right.
And you can sort of address some of these things. And so that's the only question we're really trying to answer at this point is like, as a leader, are you meeting the needs of your team? That's good enough for us right now. Like, okay, great. That means you're meeting sort of our expectations in leadership for the moment. Again, like I imagine that as you get bigger and you do have to codify things like your values, like leadership expectations, you can create, ways to evaluate this, but evaluations are inherently subjective. Like how are you going to remove that sort of subjectivity and bias? You need trends. You need to track trends, not individual answers, I think, at that point.
That's a good point. And just to further my last question, which was a follow-on, was really, how do you evaluate performance of leaders? Just ensure that they're driving the culture that the company wants. Is there something that you do? I mean, you talked a bit about getting feedback from their subordinates and other employees, but are there other things that suggest that you measure the leadership again?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily different than the way that you evaluate any employee. And I say this often, like when people ask in our all hands and things like that, how do you manage performance at a leadership level? Like same way we do with everybody else. When we hear something, we investigate it. And when someone isn't meeting expectations, we develop plans for them to follow. We set clear expectations, we give timelines, and we make sure that those things are being adhered to. We communicate openly and clearly. And we do expect all of our leaders to go through the performance review cycle, just like everybody else. So just to make sure that there are those like formal check-ins between them and their managers so that if something's not happening that needs to change, that there's an opportunity to sort of like address that. So I guess what I would say is like, don't let your leaders off the hook in terms of your performance review or performance management processes are probably good enough for performance managing your leaders. It's just often they don't get applied to leaders. We like make concessions and we treat leaders differently because, well, I'm sure we could all list off like 100 reasons why it should be different, but it's really not. Just do it the same way. If it works for everyone else, it should work for your leadership team too.
We've sort of established here in the last 20 minutes, this whole world of, leadership is, very complicated. I mean, it's not, easy. It's not supposed to be easy. But it's the one thing that, listeners can learn from anything that you've talked about today. What is that one thing?
I haven't actually said this in any of the answers that I provided. And this is more targeted towards like probably HR leadership as you're advising sort of your CEOs and your presidents and whatever in managing leadership. The fastest way to establish like leadership culture is through repeated behaviors, right? So the ones that you reward in the company, the people that you reward will be emulated. And so you have to be really conscious of who you're keeping on your leadership team and what behaviors that person espouses and demonstrates to the organization, because you can say whatever you want behind the scenes and on paper and in your interview process, but ultimately whatever is there is what will persist as a leadership value. So when you figure out that someone isn't working, again, go through the normal performance management processes, but don't hesitate. Make sure that you're promoting and keeping and growing the leaders who are living the things that you want and that are working for your company, and the ones that aren't, move them out. It's difficult. I'm not trying to diminish that, but you can't sit on these decisions because they have effects in the long term. It's a natural human behavior. Those people's teams will start to, I see myself sort of mirroring the behaviors of my CEO at each different place I'm in, because like that's the behaviors that are kind of working for the organization. So just being really, I think that's like the hardest part, but it's the most essential.
I totally agree with you. And especially in a smaller organization, and say smaller, like under 1,000 employees, because you can't afford to deal with this bad apple that is causing more havoc than not. And sure, there is a period of time that you need to try to figure it out and fix it, because obviously, you don't want people being hired and then fired, for every small little error mistake. I mean, that's nothing. But when it comes to the toxic nature of leaders that are not emulating and promoting those core values, then they have such a large span of it. They gotta go. Let them go. I want to thank you for being here. So, Nora Beatty, again, I just want to thank you for being here. And just to remind you all, the podcast lives on our website. We talk about all things HR, HR tech, world of work. AI is a hot topic right now. And thank you, Nora, for being here.
Thanks for having me.